Hello, colleagues in community affairs. My name is Elizabeth Ipinge, and this is Behind My Back. This podcast serves to identify, discuss, and demystify common societal stereotypes, stigmas, and prejudices. Behind My Back is a podcast that exposes issues that are often whispered about by putting them under the spotlight and speaking about them out in the open on a public platform. We aim to make it okay to speak out loudly about topics that are often viewed as taboo or embarrassing. I believe strongly that this will encourage communities to have more open and honest conversations about issues that matter, thus potentially getting rid of the visible division amongst Namibians due to the stigma. Listeners are reminded that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this podcast are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of the podcast, nor those of the podcast's management. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. The Behind My Back podcast and all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owner, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, service, or ethnic community.
Rituals on persons with albinism. Yes, there was a motion of persons with the albinism where their parts and bloods and hair parts were used for rituals. But in the reality speaking is that people are just come up with the concepts of making to say person with albinisms, their parts can be practiced for rituals. In our disability movement, we have not come or have not seen such beliefs that is have been, but all we know that our neighboring countries have taken that the albinism was taken as a curse where people were killed the moment they see someone was born with albinism. But that is what we have been fighting on the continent to say. People with albinism is just a human being as any person, and there is no any rituals or any witchcrafts that are relating to that. So those are we condemning it to say using the albinism persons and parts to use it as practice, and also to the exercise that was done by people trying to make use of their parts as ritual and for wealth. We actually do not understand where they have come with such concepts, and we also do not understand that how do a person with albinism's part can make you sell it for wealth in this continent of our SADC, or in the whole continent of Africa.
Not close, but here in Namibia there was a case where a guy with albinism was basically pursued by two guys for his hair. Then I think they were going to give it to a contractor in India or something. So the case is still in court. That will be a judgment. I'm looking forward to hearing or how things unfold. If you want to become rich, work or invest or something. That's my personal thought.
There has been an observable increase in the active seeking and harvesting of persons with albinism in the world, and now unfortunately also in Namibia. The belief is that body parts belonging to persons with albinism possess wealth, manifesting powers to the bearer through strange rituals. So our topic this week is Look at Money Just Walking There. This episode seeks to demystify these false claims in hopes to restore peace and safety for the community of persons with albinism in Namibia and hopefully around the continent and the world once again. With us in studio is Orban Muluti and Jeremiah Shalukeni. Orban is the current chairperson of the Namibian Organization of Youth with Disabilities, otherwise known as NOID, and further serves as the Secretary General of the National Federation of People with Disabilities in Namibia, also popularly known as the NFPDN. For those who don't know, the NFPDN is they are the umbrella organization in Namibia that houses several OPDs. OPDs, the full term for that is Organizations for Persons with Disabilities. So the NFPDN serves as the umbrella body that houses these different OPDs. So the OPDs are focused on the different areas. For example, we have that which focuses on persons with visual impairment. We have that one that focuses on those who are deaf. We have that that focuses on the needs for persons who are perhaps physically disabled. I hope that's the correct term to use, gentlemen. Yeah, and so forth. And in addition to that, Mr. Muluti is also a project coordinator at the Namibia Media Trust, where he largely deals with the Action for Access project. Now, this project has been in existence for a reasonable amount of time now, and it is actually designed to focus on establishing and further developing access to information for and with persons with disabilities. I hope I've wrapped it all up beautifully.
Yep.
While Jeremiah is a candidate legal practitioner and is also an associate mentor and coach. Okay, so we have heard that giving birth to a child with albinism is a curse, or that it means that the woman who has had this baby has been unfaithful to their partner and probably had a child with a white man, or that the baby in question, this baby now who is born with albinism, is in inverted commas, a manifestation of the spirit of a white colonist. So as you can tell, these are very crazy assumptions. But gentlemen, are you able to perhaps explain to us what albinism actually is and what causes albinism? Perhaps Orban can chime in there.
Yeah. So basically, all those misconceptions and others, there are so many. But if to simplify it, it is more of a genetic condition, like Jeremiah just mentioned. Now, there's science behind it. It's a medical situation that happens, whereby somebody or a child is born with little pigment or no pigment at all in the hair, in the skin, and in the eyes.
By pigment, are we referring to melanin?
Yes, this is melanin. This is melanin. So that scientific thing that gives you, if you are a brown person, that gives you that brown color, or if you are yellow or whatever color you are, that thing is not there. It's very little or it's missing. So basically, and then you now find that maybe your parents are super black, but you come out as white. So this condition actually affects the eyes, in the sense that many people with albinism, because of that lack of that melanin, it actually, or the pigment, it gives you a low vision, right? Some are a little bit more extreme than others, also depending on which side of the world you were born. The sun and too much light can also affect these things. So it also makes us very susceptible to sunburn, skin cancer, and other skin-related infections. But all these can obviously be prevented with proper care and all those things.
You spoke of that this condition is caused by a deficiency in pigment, which is also known as melanin. But now I can see how that would relate to persons of a darker complexion naturally, such as myself, for example. But what about in the case of persons who are predominantly naturally lighter in complexion, or are expected to be lighter in complexion? For example, persons who are Caucasian, Asian, for example. Just people who are not classified under the black community. And those who are not, normally thought of when we speak of melanin.
You get super black people, you get black people, get the yellow bones, and then you get the whiteys and stuff. So basically, all those groups, they do actually do have that the pigment, or that scientific element which creates melanin. And that's why you see that it's only that in a black person, for example, like African black, this is more it's let me say, stronger, for lack of a better word. And that's why a white person and a black person, if they had to spend the same amount of time in the sun, the white person will run out first, complaining about a burn before that. Now, us, we have very low or no melanin at all. I think in most cases it's no melanin. Sometimes you'll find that a person with albinism can have, like a black person with albinism can have black beard, meaning there is a little bit of that melanin in the beard, but then maybe the skin entirely no melanin at all, which just makes the sun rays so much dangerous. Yeah, so it can happen to any racial group. Like you said, Asian, white, Caucasian white, blacks. It can happen to. It actually, in fact, it even happens in animals. So this just goes to show that this is a natural thing that has come a long way. It's not like a virus or something that was discovered just somewhere
some
now.
may
Yeah,
believe,
in 1990 the first person with albinism. No, it comes a long way.
Yeah. I mean, thank you for pointing that out, because I was now starting to grow suspicious of you as well, Oban, because your beard appears darker than the rest of your hair. But thank you for pointing that out, because I'm sure I'm not the only one,
I mean,
who probably had that suspicion.
Always accused of dying.
Yeah. Yours is also a bit darker,
Yep.
a bit gold actually, as opposed to your hair. Your hair is a bit lighter.
I think you dyed yours, eh?
No.
Okay. Just checking.
Just to add on what you're saying, a practical example would be taking Coke and water. See, the more water you add to Coke, the more it loses its color. So it's more or less the same. If, for example, a black person can be said to be Coke, and then the more water you add, and then it becomes lighter. Yeah. So with us, you can say it's Coke without water, or water without Coke. And then with the white people now in Asia, Europe and whatnot, it's equal, it's level, same water, same. And then with the black people, it's only Coke. So that will be a good practical example too.
That's actually a smart way of trying to simplify, the whole understanding of it all. Okay, so let's try to move on to trying to understanding where this myth of the myths basically that surround persons with albinism came from. For example, some of these myths we're speaking of is that like the one we have introduced in our topic introduction, whereby it is believed that persons with albinism once, I'm sorry for using this term, but it's for lack of better terms, once harvested for their body parts, it could be their hair, their nails, limbs, actual limbs, different organs. Once someone has this in their possession, then it is believed that they can, once some strange ritual has been performed, it's believed that they can then gain wealth from this. Where do you think such very harmful myths originated from? At what point in history, Orban, do you think that this narrative came about, and what could have influenced it? And especially considering the length of time it has been around, and that it has seeped into modern society now as well.
Yeah. So first, it's very interesting. The word harvest. I feel like I can farm animals, but I understand what you're saying, and because that's basically what they say they are doing, right? So where this myth started, it's not something I can pinpoint per se to say this one started on this date. It was started by etc., and his surname was what. But one thing I can do is say it actually came a very long way. I'll make reference to a book that I read in high school, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. This book was made, I don't know if it's in the 1960s or even earlier. There was where he was talking about how because it's about the Nigerian experience. It's actually African read about how the Nigerians back in those days, those communities there, how they viewed persons with albinism. So there were already some of these supernatural attachments to people with to people with albinism. People had all these myths to say that a woman who gave birth to a person with albinism is either cursed, or that they are not real people, they are supernatural being. So it comes a long way, and I think the fact that in Africa, in all honesty, back in the years, science was not really a thing, right? We believed in our ancestors, prayed to the fires, and all these, until when the Westerners came, they started, they brought science, and this is where people became to understand how a person of albinism was born the way they were. So again, these are myths. Should I say traditional myths? From way back then, people went with it. If you ever played broken telephone, to get information,
Classic case.
as the information kept going, they kept adding spice and everything to the whole situation to say that first it was just the mother is unlucky, or she's cursed, and then later it was a thing, they don't die, they just disappear. And then as those tales went around, people came up with let me say, a whole Bible of myths about persons with albinism. And unfortunately, one of those myths is that our body parts possess some supernatural powers. Hence why they want to catch us, traffic us, and I don't want to use the word harvest. What is the word I'm looking for here? And sort of mutilate us for our body parts. Yeah.
But just to add on that, I mean, there are a lot of statistics and whatnot, but no one came forward and said, no, I became rich after performing a ritual with the bones or the body parts of a person with albinism. So that has never been mentioned. So it's sort of pointless. People keep doing that. I mean, and you also hear sacrifices of normal other people now, babies and whatnot, and you hear, for example, like a kuka shop or like a bar there's a person's head, and it's never a person with albinism's head or a body part of, it's just another person. Or you've heard someone was killed and things were taken out, and it's so there's not really any relevance or any proof confirming that this really works. Because if it really worked, I mean, some of us could not be here today.
Yeah, exactly.
Even growing up in Katutura, running around and doing all those things freely. I mean, and then we are considered a payout.
That's actually, it's very relevant what you just said, because we hear about all of these beliefs, all of these misconceptions, and all of these attacks, but never do we hear of results. So that, I think those who are now considering such, maybe this is something they could actually think about for themselves, instead of just finding themselves in unnecessary situations and hurting people unnecessarily. Because even if it was the case, it's not anyone's right to take away life just because of, your selfish desires. And it's crazy. Like with me, I don't even know really where these myths originated from. But I remember as a child, I would read books. There was one specifically, and we had a conversation about this earlier, Auburn, about, I forgot the title of the book, but it was a large book, A4 size, quite thick, and it had a lot of stories in there. So sort of like folklore, African folklore. And a lot of those stories would feature characters of basically what we now in modern society understand as persons with albinism. But back then they had different names and labels, sort of. And a common one was Ekishi. That I believe that's in Oshikwanyama. I'm Oshindonga, of the Oshindonga dialect, and in Oshindonga they say Ethithi. But then I don't even know where that came from. We don't know if it's, or I don't know if it's an insulting term or, it's something derogatory or anything like that. But the way that they would paint these characters in these books, it was in a very ugly way. It was almost like these people or these characters were not even considered monsters. They were considered to be monsters and not so much as people even. And they were considered to even be sort of cannibalistic in nature. Where they consume human meat where they sort of
Suck
attack
at
people
blood,
and
yeah.
suck blood and all of these things, and that they had tales even in these books where apparently if they had just freshly or recently consumed body parts or blood of another person, then there would be like a black spot underneath the tail and things like that. So as a child and, reading this sort of material, because now this is a very impressionable age at which you access these type of books and you grow up with that, it's almost like they have, it's pre-established stigmas and stereotypes and lies, basically. Honestly, let's just call it what it is. Just lies that is who even approved this really to be in a book and then give it to kids to teach such things. It's like teaching hate and teaching fear and stigma from a very young age. And the sad thing is that not everyone has a very responsible parent who can then, teach their child differently as to understand better. Or some parents even, they just make it worse because this is what they also grew up knowing, So yeah, and I mean, just to move on, it's clear to see that, our African societies have really been contaminated with a lot of false narratives for the longest time in history. And it appears to just, still exist in our current case, which is very sad because other beliefs would be that, a woman, or if you are a woman or a young girl, for example, be it whether you're pregnant or not, and you come across someone with albinism, then you should spit into your shirt or your dress so that you don't have children with albinism in the future, or that, the beliefs that if you are someone who is infected with HIV, then you can sleep with someone with albinism and then it would magically cure you of this. And another memory that I had, and we spoke about this also open, was that growing up, we had friends in our neighborhood who grew up with albinism. And because we were told by those who are older than us that, and other children now who probably learned it from their parents, that persons with albinism have much better, significantly better vision when it comes to like nighttime, and that it's so extreme that their eyes also apparently glow in the dark. So as kids, growing up in the neighborhood, you have games such as block what now a lot of our new generations know as hide and seek. We would then, when it's nighttime and it's now our friend, one of our friends who has albinism, when it's their chance, we are paranoid because we're like, how are we going to hide for this person not to see us? Because now, because now we even believe that this person probably can see through the wall. So now it was so extreme that we would actually literally end up exchanging clothes, even if like I'm a girl and maybe I'm hiding somewhere close to another friend who's even a male, regardless if they're a boy or girl, we would change clothes and then just intentionally show a part of the clothing of the other person so that we sort of cause confusion because we are like, we're already playing at a disadvantage here because this person can see in the dark, all of these things. So with this, I just want to find out then, how did this affect you guys' experience growing up? What did your experience growing up with albinism look like? Yeah, to this, like from as when you were a child to this point, how did that look like for you, Jeremiah?
For me, I should say my childhood was quite fun. It was quite normal. I played soccer. I did everything that I was supposed to do or that everyone else could do. But the hard part was I didn't go to any like special school, so to say. My primary school was at People's Primary School. High school was in Yonker. And then...
That's why you look familiar. Actually look familiar. But yeah, it's a conversation for another time.
You also went to Yonker?
Yeah, I did actually. What year were you there?
2014, that's when I finished.
Then you were my junior.
What year did you finish?
2010.
Oh
my goodness, I just exposed myself. But yes, go ahead.
It's fine. So yeah, I mean, like you said, there was that myth. I don't know why you walk past someone and then they'll spit inside their shirt. And I remember confronting one person. So why do you always do that? No, I was told if I see you, it's bad luck and what. I'm like, don't
so
you
you
just feel like
this?
Yeah. don't you just feel like you are making yourself dirty and
Yeah.
whatnot? And like, what's the use? What will happen now?
Mm.
And then, I mean, sometimes a person is just there, curious, just looking at you like, what's happening here now? And then I just get close to the person and take their hand and touch me, like nothing will happen to you. So that was the most sort of, yeah. And then the name calling, and also at school, just paying attention. I mean, taking down notes, you have to get closer to the chalkboard and whatnot. And sometimes it becomes difficult. For example, you say, what class was that? This class of Sikopo, the science class. It was hard to get to. So you had to ask assistance from someone, which let me copy it down. And then sometimes people will not be. It's like, no, you're just pretending. You can really see you're still wearing glasses, but So, and then I remember, I think it was grade 10, or I had to get those double glasses. So it was.
I remember those glasses.
It was always, it's not easy, especially beginning of the year, and then there are new students. Then you are
By
now
double
wearing
glasses,
those.
what do you mean?
So there's
like
two lenses, like
two.
a front
Literally,
row
literally.
and then another
Yeah.
row in
Really?
front. So this
And then
thing,
you could
you already
zoom.
look,
Really?
Yeah.
makes you
in
look
and
very
out.
weird. Nobody liked them, but they helped it.
Wow.
So if it's
I've
now
never
a
actually
new
seen this.
student, it's very hard now to, somehow it will,
We'll just be looking at you.
yeah, like, what is this now? So yeah, but all in all, it was, my childhood was normal.
And Auburn, how was this for you?
Yeah. I would also want to say it was normal, but when I look at things now, I will think that, because I thought for me that was normal at the time. But when I reflect now and think it, I'm like, no, but that was not supposed to happen. Now that I know better as an adult. For example, the stories. First of all, let me start with the name calling. It was interesting when you were speaking and you're talking about how olden days stories depicted persons with disability, persons with albinism as monsters. Some of us, like me, sometimes I rap, and that's the only time I'm a monster on the MIC. Nah, but in all honesty, so there was the name calling. This obviously it started at school, and this is what I always say. Sometimes when I am name called or discriminated by a kid younger than 4 years old, usually I feel no sort of anger or hate or blame towards this kid, right? Because for me, this is a kid. Like you said, kids are very impressionable at that age, at that child age. Whatever they see, whatever they hear, that's what they actually believe. And that's why it's so easy for a child to learn languages and to learn new things at that age. Now, as a parent, people who have lived in the world now for, let's say, maybe 30 plus years, especially the elder parents, it is your job to educate your children to say that these people, back in the days, they were thought of as this, but they're just people like you, normal people. So for me, I cannot blame the child. This is a parent's responsibility, and especially when the child is not school going. I assume at some schools, some teachers take the prerogative to actually go out of the curriculum and teach some of these things. I think it was even supposed to be made compulsory to say that, because I know there is a chapter somewhere in grade, what is it? Is it 6 or 7 in science, where they talk about person with albinism and something about the chromosome, the X chromosome, the Y chromosome, and how somebody is actually born with albinism. But I feel like some of this education should have started earlier, obviously simplified earlier, but at early childhood learning institutions. So my experience, obviously, the discrimination, people calling you names, looking at you weird every time you walk by, like you're a celebrity, and then to add also to my experiences, actually, as a young kid, I was born in Katima Mulilo, and then I moved to Windhoek, and I've been here ever since when I was 5. So there was a time before I came to Windhoek where I was actually found at the Namibia-Zambia border. For those that don't know, that border is just separated by a river. So you just cross a boat and then you're already in another country. You just use a boat or a canoe, then you're already in the other country. So I was found there with a stranger, by somebody who knew me, luckily, because I was offered sweets and told to come with this person. Meaning this person was trying to steal me. I don't know if this person was going to raise me, and who knows, maybe today I would have been a doctor somewhere in Zambia, or if this person was going to mutilate me for my body parts, kill me, perform ritual stuff with me. So this is actually a real life experience. And
Was this person ever found? Like,
no. This person, you know what happened? So there at the border, it was like, isn't this Madam who's son? This guy now realized that no, I'm caught, and he actually ran, and I was just returned. And mind you, back in those days, it was in the 90s, I believe. Some of us we are
veterans.
We are veterans, born free veterans. Yeah, but it was back in those days, and back in those days, I don't think people actually knew what was going on in terms of people killing and doing rituals. It was not widespread in the media and everywhere else. So this lady, maybe she not even think too much of it. She just thought, maybe he was lost or whatever. So I was taken back home, luckily, and I'm here to tell this story today. But I have experienced that, and there was a near situation. I was almost gone. Now imagine how many other kids that go missing that we do not know about.
That is true.
So
that is true.
Growing up with stuff, but here we are, and I think we are testimony to the fact that we have made it through those years. Anybody else can as well, and I think, and that's why a platform such as this one, just to open the eyelids of people, is very, very essential.
I mean, what you just said is it's scary for the most part. And I can't imagine how that experience must have been to you. And thank God it wasn't to an extent
honestly,
that caused
I felt
you
nothing.
I mean, for a larger child, and especially if more aggressive measures were used, then it could have easily been a traumatic experience to the child, and it would have shaped the child's life in a very negative way.
True.
So I want to find out from you, Jeremiah, have you had any type of experiences that may have been life-threatening or hateful or harmful, besides now the teasing that you got at school for your use of glasses, the double lens glasses, or the need to sit closer to see?
Not really. I mean, the last thing I remember was, I think this was more, maybe 2 years back. Like, I got in a cab, or not only in it, like you just go somewhere. There's this artist, Nakale, with Albinism. And then the guy called me that.
Yeah, they love calling us that.
You see, and then I called him Hage. It's like,
he called you Nakale.
Yeah, I called him Hage.
I always call them Tatebuti.
Why would you call me that? I mean, if I'm, and then you are also Hage was my president. It's like, no, it's fine. What is your name? Then he asked me my name. Then, okay. That's how we proceed now. Because, people, instead of asking for your name, they just call you some random names.
Or Flame. Flame,
DJ, I'm busy hotel.
Yeah. These famous guys now.
Yeah. And then I'm like, no, just ask me my name.
Like, I'm not even laughing because this is funny. It's crazy how human beings
it's funny because
it is.
I mean, it's flattering to say, okay, those guys are talented, super talented, famous people. But then you know what the person means because they are associating everybody with albinism as the same. Do you know how many times I was mistaken for people? In fact, one day somebody went to buy me drinks for Africa because apparently she thought I was Flame. Flame, and I said, free drinks? I will not even say I'm not Flame. I swear I enjoyed those drinks and I left.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well, on a more serious note or side of things, I think I'll like for you to address this one first, just as we grow closer to the end of this session. What are some of the legal implications you can educate us on that can be taken against perpetrators of, when it comes to kidnapping or trafficking or mutilating or attempting to, or whatever else that people who are greedy clearly try to do to persons with albinism. First of all, tell us this in a Namibian context, and if there's a comparison that can be made to a broader context, maybe African or outside of the continent.
Yeah. So going back, Namibia we gained independence back in the 90s. So our constitution is the supreme law of the country. So, and then in that constitution, chapter 3 talks about gives or guarantees every Namibian the right, the human rights. So human rights generally, they come from you just being born. The fact that you are born as a human being, you are already, before you are, let me say, before, how do I even put it? Before you are given a name, or before you are categorized as such, you are already having human rights. So to make it even more interesting, sometimes a baby in the stomach has already rights. They have a right to sue, for example, if the mother was involved in an accident, then that baby was born with, for example, a disability or an injury, they can sue for something that happened to them while they were not born.
Please don't say this too loudly.
No, I'm just saying now to say how important human rights are.
Yeah.
So our chapter 3 gives those human rights, and the first Article 5 it guarantees, or it puts a responsibility on the government to protect the Namibian human rights, especially the right to life, which is now guaranteed in Article 6. So when it comes to persons with albinism, first of all, Article 8, which guarantees every person the right to dignity. It says no person shall be treated in an inhuman, degrading, a person should not be subjected, even prisoners, before, a prisoner going to court, they were in chains here in the hands, and also, so that was regarded as inhuman. So for us also to be, our body parts to be used for some ritual, that's already inhuman. So that's already a big crime, so to say. And then in Article 10, everyone is regarded as equal. There is no person above the law, either you're female or male. And, and then there is, I think it's Article 23 that guarantees affirmative action. People that were formerly, mistreated, like even women that were held behind, those people are specially categorized to say they should be prioritized and they should be given more attention when it comes to protection and empowerment and all that. So, and then we have the Criminal Procedure Act, which sets out the procedures to crimes of murder and whatnot, and and then you have the combating of trafficking. This is a newly, I think it's 2018. It's a 2018 act. Doesn't really specify to say if a person is caught dealing in a human or an albino's body part, or a person with any other disability, this is what must happen to them. It's of a general application, so to say. So even though there are those laws in place, no law is really speaking on protecting persons with albinism or persons with disability in general. Yeah, so like I said, with the law reform, I was tasked with a project, me and my other colleague, tasked to deal with, to look at all the laws in Namibia and see how they are in conflict and how they protect the rights of persons with disability in general. So some of those laws are old laws and some of them are new laws. But also with the Namibian, the National Disability Council, they were working, or they are busy working on a disability law. So this law will be able to cater for everything. So to say, I don't think they are still open for public comments yet, but some of these things will be placed there to say if a person commits such a crime against a person with albinism, the law should do this and this. So it's I think it will be called the Persons with Disability Act. So it's still a bill. I mean, it's still a bill undergoing certain reviews, and but that will be the main act now that will protect all of us in Namibia. And then internationally, so like most of these things, so are not really, they are not frequent, or they don't happen a lot in Namibia. So that's why I think our government is slow to take steps. Then I think you have other countries like Congo. I think that's where it was common. They use
Tanzania.
Yeah, Tanzania things. So those ones have more strict laws. Like they have laws that say if this and this happens to a person with albinism, I mean, and then there are shelter houses. There are, a specific code. You don't even, if you are found guilty of that crime or suspected of committing a crime against a person with albinism, there is a special court already there. You will be tried and, sentenced that time. Unlike here, you have to go through the justice system. The case will be pushed forward, and then people have to, public outcry. Like this case of the two guys that were attempting to sell the hair. So the case is now moved forward, and then people had to go to court to protest, and for them to be denied bail now. So in those countries, such the public does not need to. It's already, how can I say, it's a state of emergency, so to say. So government takes immediate action. Yeah. And then internationally, there's the UN CRPD, the Convention of Persons with Disability. And there are also other international albinism organizations that protect the rights of us now.
Persons with disabilities. All right, that was very educational. Just very briefly, Auburn, do you feel that this that is being done is enough, or do you feel it can be better improved? And also, while you're at it, because I've observed difference in use of term. Just now, from what you were saying, Jeremiah, you've referred to people with this condition as persons with albinism, but you've also used the term albinos. I want to understand also which one is the correct one to use, because I think some of these stigmas and things like that, they can be ended by just learning and understanding the correct terminology to use. And for a person like me who really cares about the next person's feelings, I want to know what is the correct one to use so that I don't unintentionally offend the next person. So perhaps in your response, Auburn, you can just sort of throw that in as well.
Yeah. So again, also, Jeremiah was highlighting the legal stuff. Most of it was lawyer talk, but at least you simplified it in a manner that we can understand. And one thing that I was picking up is that most of these laws that are meant to protect human rights, or, for example, the Constitution, right? The Constitution can be amended, but doesn't often get amended. It's from 1990, right? Am I right? Or 1989, whenever it was drafted. And then you find, like, for example, the National Policy on Disability, so from 1997. You find the National Disability Council Act is from 2004. So those are the ones that were supposed to directly address issues of people with disability in general, and also the persons with albinism, in the case of for the sake of our topic here today. So one thing that I'm realizing is that these are not only outdated laws, and the danger in that is also because, mind you, when these laws were being drafted, persons with disabilities were not considered. I mean, persons with albinism were not considered people with disabilities. This was something that was brought forth by the UN. The UN actually only announced in 2008 that persons with albinism are persons with disabilities, because they realized that in terms of the societal or in terms of the social model of disability, which is the barriers that are set forth because of situations in the society, discrimination, stigmatization, and also by the fact that I don't even know why it was declared so late, because we have impairments, visually impairments. So basically what I'm trying to bring forth here is that if we were only considered in 2008 as having being people with disabilities, meaning those laws that were drafted before then did not put the considerations of people with this albinism in it. And that's why you will find also, again, like, just to squeeze in your question about terminologies, like I always explain to you, is it varies, right, from depending on which part of the world you are. I think this is a situation whereby you have organizations for people with disabilities, and then you get the federation, which is the umbrella body. This is sort of like a union. So these people, these groups in their countries, they decide what they prefer in the context of maybe culturally or what the situation on the ground is in that country or that part of the world. So what I've come to notice is that there are people with albinism that don't mind being called an albino, but then you get others who, like myself, feel like there's an element of objectification there, because why don't you? Black people are not called blackies, they are called black people, or white people are not called whiteys, maybe informally, but that's also wrong. When they also get offended when you call them such terms. So now, why objectify? It's a condition. It's called albinism. Why do we say albino? So for me, it's just a term of almost like objectification. And just also to wrap up, the laws. I'm very happy you mentioned the Persons with Albinism, Persons with Disabilities Act. Hopefully, they will consult everybody that needs to be consulted in this situation, because, like you said, imagine this gentleman. Although we demonstrated, and they were denied bail. These gentlemen who are seated there have not yet been tried. Because if these guys are prosecuted for how many ever years, and that is actually going to play a big role in making sure that the next person will be afraid. Will be like, wow, those other guys got 10 years. I'm not taking that chance. So yes, Elizabeth, I think maybe my answer was satisfactory.
Yes, indeed.
To add on that.
Yes, briefly, please, Jeremiah.
What's making things difficult for especially the law in Namibia is our law that guarantees equality and stops discrimination. It does not sort of list disability as a ground for discrimination. Only talks about sex, gender, creed, religion. So a person cannot be discriminated on those grounds, but disability is not one of those grounds. So that's making it very difficult.
You're saying a person can be discriminated against those...
should not be discriminated against their sex, gender, ethnic origin, and what, but discrimination is not listed under the
disability.
Yeah, and just quickly, Elizabeth, sorry. And this is something you remember at the launch of the Braille Constitution, when I had posted the question on the floor to, at the time you were doing the presentation from the side of law reform, so I posted the question to say that, we see on social media, people are suing for hundreds of thousands for defamation of character. I was saying, but if you are calling me names and saying stuff about me that are not true, you're also defaming me. But then according to what you just said now, meaning I cannot sue for defamation of character based on if someone says, this guy, he disappears, he doesn't die, whatever, something that would potentially taint my public image and my social experience.
Wow, this was a powerful discussion. I really hope to take this further, perhaps on the same platform, if not another equally important platform.
Yeah.
I'd like to express so much gratitude to both of you gentlemen for joining me in studio today and speaking about this very often considered to be sensitive topic. It was refreshing to be able to talk to two young people who are able to openly discuss this without feeling any type of offense, and who are open to not just teaching but also learning in the process. So thank you so much, and I'm sure that our audience has picked up so much from this that they didn't know, as I have, and it was a really informative way to sort of kill those previously formed perceptions that I had, from childhood and so forth, to a more matured understanding of how things actually really work. So yeah, thank you so much. We definitely look forward to having you here again in the future. You're both very well-informed young men. So it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you again so much.
Thank you very much for having us.
We have come to the end of yet another informative episode. Be a part of the conversation and share your thoughts in the comment sections. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, as well as by following us on Instagram. Make sure to turn on your notifications and be up to date with all of our content. For expressions of interest or simply just to interact, reach us on our WhatsApp and email lines. This episode will be coming to you soon on your local community radio station. See bios for listings, links, and more information. This episode has been produced with the support of the Namibia Media Trust in collaboration with the Deutsche Welle Academy under the NXT Journalism Training Hub.